got Ross Robinson here, and actually I'm up in your space making a recording. So thank you so much for having me in here. We're going to, interview each other, but, I'm super stoked to, get face to face with you because we see each other on social media. Like that's how we always kind of come across people. And when I first moved to Bend, I was looking for individuals that I felt were like-minded, action sports, outdoors, just doing cool shit. And your page was probably like the 5th page I came across. And I was like, this guy, I don't know him, but I feel like I'm going to know him eventually. So 1.5 years later, here we are, super stoked. So thanks for coming in.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for making it happen. And yeah, we connected a while ago, and it's only just takes time. And then so glad to have you here. And it's definitely like-minded. I'm pretty sure I read your message when I was in the gym. Like you DM me on Instagram, hey, what's up? Yeah, and I remember I was like in the gym on taking a break, and I just scrolled through your message. So yeah, it fits perfectly. Timing is incredible.
Yeah, always timing's super important. So, but you actually grew up here in Central Oregon, right? So you're from Central Oregon. Tell me about what that was like, because I'm not originally from here, which I'll let you know later where I'm from.
So I'm painfully local. That's what I tell people. They're like, what does that mean? This means I was born in St. Charles here in Bend, and grew up in Sisters, which is 20 minutes away, smaller town. But yeah, Central Oregon has been home forever, and it's definitely a special place to grow up. Tons of access to the outdoors, and great communities for outdoor recreation, kind of whatever you want to do. It's here, and I feel like I grew up in a special time too. I remember when Bend was quite a bit smaller, and this area was maybe not found out yet. It's always been growing since I can remember, but it has certainly exploded in the last 10 years and has definitely made its mark just for the culture and everything that we have. So if you enjoy, the outdoors and want to do stuff, this is a great place to do it. So, and that hints why I never have left. It's funny. I have friends that live in other great places, for everything that I like to do, whether it be Wyoming or Idaho or Colorado. And I'm like, dude, if I moved there, then I'm just the guy invading your local area. I'm like, I might as well just stay here and be the angry local. Everybody invading my area. But no, it's all good, and it's a pretty special place for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in White Salmon, Washington, so not super far from here, and another outdoor destination, more known for water sports, which ironically I've not done any of those water sports. But when I was in high school, white salmon started to boom. We had new companies coming in, people coming in for tourist events and stuff like that. So Hood River white salmon saw that big boom as well, and has continued to kind of see it. But I didn't even know about Bend until probably 2018. I felt like I was in such a small little vacuum of my world, and didn't even know Bend existed until my wife was like, let's go down to Bend. And I was like, I've heard of this, but I don't really know much about this. And coming down here and seeing what it has to offer, I'm jealous of locals that got to grow up here and have that experience of mountain biking, rock climbing, snowboarding, snowmobiling, all these different activities that are offered here. So, I mean, what was that like growing up with that access?
You take it for granted for sure when you're young. It's just natural. You think it's just what you have. So, I was just always a part of everything. And we have a cabin in Eastern Oregon that's where I just learned everything. How to run a chainsaw, how to, fix things, how to be alone in the woods, hunting. That was the early days with Dad and growing up there and doing all that. And we still go do that, of course. And then it just spiraled into everything else. And then really what's crazy is my first love was snowboarding. Mm-hmm. That was the first thing that I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And that kind of introduced me to action sports. And then I started watching X Games and all this other stuff. But my dad had a history of snowmobiling. His dad, my grandpa, owned a small dealership in Eastern Oregon long time ago in the 80s. And so he's just had snowmobiling in his life. And since Dad did it, then I did it. And it just became this thing that I got obsessed with. when you have that like competitive obsessive mindset of something about something, that's just what happened. And then I was like, I got to figure out how I can do this for my life.
Was it obviously snowboarding is amazing and fun and we enjoy the crap out of it. But what was the biggest difference when you got on a snowmobile? Was it just the fact that the engine, the rumble, like, you know, from my dirt bike background, I know that there's no other feeling like having an engine beneath you. Was it kind of that sensation? I
would say it's two things. And the one answer is funny because the funny part is I only really started snowmobiling with my dad a lot more is because I had like these growing pains when I was like 13, 14 and I couldn't even ride because I had growing pains in my ankles. Okay. I was just growing so fast and like couldn't even turn. The pressure of like turning a snowboard on my shins and ankles just was excruciating. So it didn't hurt to go ride my snowmobile and because you just don't have that like pressure and foot input. So I just started riding snowmobiles and by the time I was out of that stage in life, snowmobiling was all that really mattered to me. And the other side of it was mom would not let me race my motorcycle. Okay. So she was like, you're not racing your moto. You're lucky you even get to ride around a little bit on your motorcycle. And because it just scared her, right. Of course. So she didn't really understand that what I was doing in the mountains was also pretty extreme and dangerous. Yep. So those two kind of together really sparked the ignition of snowmobiling for me. But I always say, like, if dad did anything else, I probably would have been that guy because I have this love for it all. And so that's just kind of like, I don't know, just was like around dad just led me to that. And yeah, I think he regretted it for a while because it's an expensive sport. When you break stuff, it's not fun. But now it's all kind of paid off and he doesn't have to pay for my broken stuff anymore.
Yeah. I was 10 years old. I fell out of a loft in a barn and I broke my nose, leaving me with a deviated septum for the rest of my life, which is why I'm super stoked to have Intake Breathing as a sponsor where they create nasal dilators that will actually open up, at least for me with the deviated septum, but even for others to enhance nasal breathing. Not only do they create the nasal dilator, they also started to make mouth tape, which mouth tape is awesome if it's something that you're not familiar with. Taping your mouth for sleeping can help to aid in better quality sleep because we're promoting more of the rest and digest of our central nervous system, helping us to relax. And not only that, it helps keep our mouth closed at night, which can lead to things like dry mouth, bad breath, and overall just feeling kind of groggy in the morning. Whether you're looking to breathe better through your nose or shut off your mouth so that you can breathe more efficiently through your nose, check out Intake Breathing. Go to intakebreathing.com/Outlier Athlete and use code Outlier Athlete for 15% off your order. So looking back, like you mentioned X Games and stuff like that, like I feel like when we were younger, X Games, you know, was such a Olympic event for action sports, you know, LA Coliseum, you know, stuff like that. It's kind of morphed and changed a little bit, but I look at like Winter X and coming from a moto background, I always watched like snowcross. That was something that was such like a crossover, is so closely related and still is very much so. And so like I remember certain racers like Doug Henry going and doing snowcross. Yeah. And was that something that you looked at and were like, that's what I want to go do, is something like that?
I would have loved the opportunity. Yeah. And for people who don't know the snowmobile culture that well, there is, it's very divided. From the West Coast is all mountain riding. Okay. So it's a very different machine than the Midwest, East Coast, where they don't quite have the elevation. Mm-hmm. So it's trail riding, and that's where all the snowcross is. And there's a few guys that have like figured it out how to put it together and go race snowcross, but it's just like anything where it's like, if you don't start young, you're just not going to be able to hang. And I would have totally loved to do that. Same goes with the hill climb circuit. That's like the big mountainside circuit. I would have loved to do that as well, but it's 16 hours to a race. Wow. So I'd rather just go ride than spend my weekends driving and riding for 5 minutes that weekend. Right. Yeah. And trying to like learn the art and process of racing. The there's a lot of those guys, it becomes generational. So their dad knows the circuit, their dad knows how to work on stuff, their uncle, whoever it might be, introduces them to the racing side because it's so different.
Right.
Just like anything, when you like start competing in racing versus any sport that has a fun versus a racing side, it's just like, those guys are serious.
Right.
And they spend a lot of money and a lot of time to beat you up every weekend when you just show up unprepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, directly crossover to moto in that way, of which like you got your free riders, people that really enjoy going out and spending time in the mountains or, you know, hitting big, you know, natural jumps and stuff like that. Then you got the guys that are putting $20,000 into their bikes and going to racing on the weekend. And both know how to ride a motorcycle wonderfully, but it's just a different discipline at the end of the day, which it sounds very similar in that way.
It is 100%. Now that I pay for all my stuff and I'm not under my parents' world, I am avid moto guy as well. Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, you totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had to learn how to race. Now I race hard enduro.
Cool.
And I've had to like teach myself how to how the mental side of racing and like what it all looks like, just beyond even being prepared mechanically and with your gear. You got to like, it's a game. Yeah. And those guys that grow up doing it are really good at it.
So for me, I've never actually been on a snowmobile, believe it or not, just something that's never crossed my path to be able to have the opportunity to. Now, you know, you're talking about hard enduro and you have your massive snowmobiling background. What's kind of the crossover between the two? And then what's the biggest separation between the two as well, other than terrain, obviously?
Yeah. Well, the beauty about big mountain snowmobiling and backcountry snowmobiling is you're not restricted to a trail.
Right.
You can go wherever you want. You can, you find lines, and I mean, it's more similar to like skiing in the backcountry than anything else because it's freedom, which is such a beautiful part about it. And what we've done since probably 2010, 12, 13, that's when the sport went to like crazy levels of the snowmobiles were finally capable of going into like really, really gnarly spots and going up crazy stuff. So and I was just like on the tail end of it. There's like the pioneers, Chris Brandt, Dan Adams, those guys that like really pushed all that, Brett Rasmussen. They just changed the whole game. So then when hard enduro kind of is blowing up currently in the US, it's become very popular. Yep. And Keith Curtis races pro hard enduro, finished Erzberg. Wow. Finished 17th at Erzberg, and he's like the reigning world champion he's like unbeatable on a snowmobile.
Yeah.
At hill climb. So the similarities for those two are just basically the line selection and, being in tune with your momentum, your speed, how much throttle do you need to conquer where you're going. Mm-hmm. The beautiful part about hard enduro racing is a lot of times the flags are 50 feet apart. So you have options and you're trying to make passes and do all these things and kind of picking your line. So really the line selection and how you read terrain, even though it goes from snow to dirt, it's very similar. Mm-hmm. The biggest difference for me is snowmobiling is all about track speed. So the faster your track spinning, the more you're going to be on top of the snow, especially when it's deep. You want a ton of track speed, ton of momentum. For the first 2 years, I did not know what clutch control was. I was just like, just spinning tire, throwing rocks everywhere. So learning how to not spin and get traction has been like a big challenge. So that's like the biggest thing for me was like, I need to be traction control with the clutch.
Right.
So that's why I have like immense respect for those guys that are pro at it. It's so challenging. And it just beats you up too. That's the other similarity too for the technical snowmobiler to the technical moto rider is like, you just like punishment. Yeah. You just like to go get your ass kicked out there. So yeah, those are kind of the similarities and differences for me anyways.
Yeah. That's funny that you say the track speed and stuff. And you say that and it's obvious. It's like, of course you want to stay on top and you don't want to get, suck down below. And that makes me think of like water sports as well, like having that momentum on top of, water so that you stay above it.
Yeah.
And obviously like snowmobiles can do that on water as well. So that makes a lot of sense of why that track speed would be there. But it's funny you mentioned going onto the dirt bike and then, having more than enough traction and not really knowing what to do with it and like how to slip the clutch or how to use the throttle to grip more or whatever it might be. But, also I believe that you have a 2-stroke, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 2-strokes notorious, high torque for that spin and stuff like that as well. I'm curious, have you rode like a modern like 4-stroke and like felt that difference?
Yeah. Yep. I've had a couple 450s, and like when snowbiking was snowbiking was on the come up. I built a few snow bikes, and so rode both dirt and snow on those. And what's interesting about hard enduro specifically is like it's all 2-strokes.
Yep, it is.
Just because it's that like lightweight, and those 300s are. Now we're getting to like the nuts and bolts, but they just grunt, and they have that ability to like get a lot. They have that bottom torque.
Yep.
Whereas a snowmobile, you're just like, get me to as many RPMs as I can have as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. So we have like full track speed, because it's just like a boat, like you said. Yeah. Like you have to plane out and get on top and go. So yeah, it's really tricky to like learn that. And luckily I had a few friends that were like, they yelled at me. They're like, use your clutch. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I used it to take off. I don't need it anymore.
Yeah. I know how to switch gear. I know how to shift, dude. I know how to shift gears. Yeah.
No, that's super cool. And like, that's what I was excited to talk to you about, because I know you had the background in moto a little bit, with the snowmobile stuff. So I wanted to really kind of like see what that gap difference was, and also where it crosses over, because mostly of that snow bike existing, because somebody said, I think we can make something that's like this baby. And I've never been on one of those either, but it seems like this like happy medium between the two. So tell me a little bit about like what it's like on a snow bike compared to like when you take that track off and put the tire back on and go on dirt.
Yeah. So the snow bike thing is funny, and it's almost a bummer because it's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And it's so close to being incredible. But a modern 4-stroke has like 45 horse. Mm-hmm. My snowmobile off the factory has 180.
Yeah.
So the horsepower difference is crazy. We have a CVT clutch, so we don't have gears. We're belt driven, and that makes it nice too. We don't have to switch gears. The snow bike, you are like you're playing that game of what gear am I supposed to be in? Mm-hmm. And the bike is just under so much load. What's crazy is if you and I were going to go ride and you were like, I want to go where you're going, and you have moto experience, you by the end of the day, you could be in some really, really crazy places on a snow bike, because it's just intuitive.
Yeah.
And it has this ability to like, you can sit down on it in third gear and just hold it wide and just rip through trees. Whereas if I put you on a snowmobile in deep snow, now we have this crazy technique that you have to understand to ride. That's really hard. The deep snow skill set for sledding is a crazy head wall. Like you can drive it down the trail, but as soon as you need to go get stuff done in the deep snow and like navigate terrain, then you have to know how to ride it properly. Yeah. And that's what gets really hard because of this whole counter steer thing. To go left, you have to steer right, you have to get on edge. And that's kind of the unfortunate part about it. You have to get over that. And then once you get over that, it becomes a lot more fun.
Right.
But I understand why people ride them and they're like, this sucks, because they don't understand what you have to do. And it's so counterintuitive. There's nothing that you steer left to go right with. The only thing that I've ridden that's similar is like a street bike.
Okay.
Because you're counter steering basically to get the lean in, which is the same as a snowmobile.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But as far as from moto to snow bike, yeah, they're super intuitive, which is great. The snow bike, unfortunately, has a lot of downsides. And to properly build a snow bike, you're looking at $20,000, 25,000. So you might as well just go buy a new snowmobile and learn how to ride it properly, which is a bummer because they're definitely totally different. You're never going to go on a ride with snow bikers and snowmobilers and be like, we all had fun today.
Right.
there's only a few snow bikers that are that gnarly and that good that they can like ride and keep up, just in the sense of we're just at such a great power advantage. Like we just go up stuff so much faster and so much easier, but they're really cool.
Yeah.
There's a few guys who ride them like ride the wheels off them. Yeah, they're incredible. So
yeah, that's what I think about is like, I've seen so many different people that I know actually hop on them, and I see it once or twice and then I don't see it again. And I'm like, did it not go well? Like, what made you not continue this activity? You know, price point obviously is up there, as you mentioned, like to build one that you're going to like very much enjoy, you know, you're getting up into a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then like you look at a dirt bike price and you're like, still a lot of money, but not quite as much money.
Yeah.
So I think there's a time and place for everything, you know, and I think that's like the beauty of being here in Central Oregon as well, is like there's a time where being on the sled is going to be just epically sick, just the best thing ever. And then there's going to be a time where the dirt bike is going to be the one rolling out of the garage in the morning, you know? So it's kind of the beauty of this area.
And right now it's dirt bike season.
Oddly enough,
the last couple of weeks have been dirt bike season. So, that is the beauty of here.
Yeah.
So if you're too much of a diehard at anything, you're almost going to like not like it maybe, because you need options. You got to have your quiver full of activities because Mother Nature is going to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it. It's funny being, you know, from, you know, north of here is just wet. You know, I'm just from the wet area. So it's like, it doesn't get a ton of snow to where we would even have access to be able to go do things like on a sled, but it would be just enough snow to stop us from doing other things. Like, so we look at that, I'm like, you know, being here, higher elevation, but it's sunny so much and it hasn't dumped a bunch of snow this year. So it's like new access to new things at different times. And yeah, being able to be flexible definitely is a big helping hand.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, you know, you mentioned the physicality of it, like being on the sled, but also, you know, being on the bike, especially hard enduro. I would say hard enduro on a dirt bike is probably one of the most physically challenging things on a dirt bike. Obviously, all the respect to the supercross racers, the motocross racers, but short stints of sprints, right? So when it comes to being on a sled, obviously super heavy. I'm not even familiar with how heavy like a off the showroom sled weighs. What's that about?
It's probably when you add fuel and oil and all your gear and stuff, you're anywhere between 550 to 620 weight. Yeah. So
and does it feel that way? Does that weight feel like it's there when you're handling the machine and stuff like that?
Yes and no. With when things are going right, no.
Yeah.
It's easy. Technique is king. And so when everything's going great, yeah, you don't feel it. And then when things aren't going right and you're almost gonna get stuck or you're like you gotta get around something, it's like wrestling a bull. Like you gotta go. And that's always kind of how I've thought about it is you can just ride for hours and be like, oh, I'm good. And then for 5 minutes, you're just like holding on for dear life, trying to get everything to happen for you.
Right.
And it's definitely, it's short stints of like, oh gosh, we got to go now.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't want the snowmobile to get stuck. Because once you stick them, you got to know what you're doing to get them unstuck, or you're just going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's probably advisable not to just go out into the deep snow by yourself on a sled without like any other parties.
The amount of people that I've driven by on the way back to the truck, and they're just like, I'm just like, oh, these guys are not having a good day. Yeah. They're not prepared. They got in way over their head. Even though they're 20 feet off the trail, it's just deep. And then I've gone over there and they've got shovels out and everything. And they're just like excavating a thing when, if you know how to use, you have 180 horsepower shovel. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So like you can use the track to move a lot of snow and help itself get unstuck. So back when I was a guide forever, that's like my job was just getting snowmobiles unstuck. So we just really good at getting them unstuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was going to be where I wanted to lead next, is into the guiding that you've done, because it seems like that was a big part of your life. And it's also, you know, an awesome opportunity to be able to travel to go do shit that you like to do already, right? Like some people travel for work because, you know, they have to go talk to this CEO here, they have to do this and that, but you got the opportunity to go ride your sled and travel. So what was that kind of like? Break all that down.
Yeah. So that was, looking back, it was crazy timing. And I did a few things at 18 that were really smart, and I didn't really realize how smart they were. I was just like, this feels right, or this is what I need to do. So I worked for Chris Brandt. Him and I go way back now. Well, this over 10 years ago. He has an operation out of Colorado, and it's kind of the equivalent of like going hiking.
Okay.
So it's marketed towards advanced riders, guys who know what they're doing. Later on in me working there, we changed that, and we accepted a lot of kind of more beginner riders to help them become better. And so I went there when I was 17. My dad helped me pay for a trip.
Wow.
And I was actually supposed to ride with now my friend Sane. He worked for Chris. He was his right-hand man. But Sane Skinner, he had broken his leg earlier. So I was supposed to ride with him. There was two groups, Chris's group and then Sane's group. But I had seen Sane in the snowmobile videos. I was like, this guy sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
And like, now that we're friends, can confirm, great time. One of my all-time favorite humans. And so I was supposed to ride with him, and I show up, and I'm like I'm 17, and I'm in this lodge with all these guys in their 30s, 40s. They're all on vacation. And I just wanted to like see what it was like. I really wanted to test myself too. I had no idea where I stood up. I just rode with my dad. But I watched all the videos and everything. I just like taught myself from everything that I saw online and in snowmobile movies. And I had like a video of, and all the other guests were like, you got a video of you riding? And I was like, yeah, I guess I do. And I showed it to them. And they're like, man, you rip, you ride really good. And then here comes Chris Brandt, who had never met him. He's X Games gold medalist, Monster Energy, like, and he's like, they're like, you got to see this kid's video. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to.
No, please no.
Yeah. And Chris is like, let me see it. And I show it to him. He's like, you're riding with me tomorrow.
Oh shit.
So I'm like, oh gosh. So I ride with him, and basically it ends up like for the next 3 days, I was just like everywhere. I would make it as far as I could behind him, and then he'd turn around, get me unstuck, and then we would go get everybody else unstuck. And at the end of that week, I was like, if you have an opening here ever, like I'd love to work here. And he was like, yeah, cool, you know. And after working there for 6 years, there's a lot of people who want to work there. It's it's an incredible opportunity to work there when you're that age. And then I got the idea that I'm going to go to school in Colorado, so I'm closer to him. Like I'm within shot if he needs help.
Right.
So I didn't even go finish the semester. I went to Colorado Mountain College in Breck for like 2 months, took like just random classes. And then finally like got him to like let me help work in the shop and get stuff ready for that upcoming season. And by November, he was just like, yeah, you can just work here full time. And I was like, cool. Didn't even call the school.
Yeah.
I just quit going. Yeah. It was like finals were in a couple weeks. And I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of what happened. I moved in we all kind of lived in a house. We had a guide house, and I moved in there, and then that was kind of like the rest was history. And that's really what started my career in snowmobiling. And from there, it led to, we got to go to BC a bunch and guide up there. We went to South America a couple times, which is incredible. And it was 150 days on the snow for 6 years. And probably 3 or 4 years in, these filmers would come to film Chris. And I was like, I want to get filmed. Yeah. Like, I want to be a name. I want to be a pro. I want to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, my riding was getting better and better and better. And but it's tough. Like, nobody knows who you are. So that's when I just like got the camera and I started doing vlogs, and we did those for a couple of years, and they were in the scale of what we were doing were huge. They were incredible. Like, people loved them. We had a ton of fun, me and the other guides. And that's how I became like the media guy also. So I was like running his YouTube channel, growing my YouTube channel, guiding 7 days a week. Like, it was madness those last few years. And then finally, like, the burnout switch hit, and I was just like, I don't want to guide anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to go chase other things. So then that's what's led me on to now.
Yeah. So you said about 6 years you were doing that then.
Yep. Yeah. I worked there for 6 years total.
Yeah. And that's a good amount of time to start to feel that burnout. I like to kind of say, like, life comes in like 4-year stints. Like, you know, just so happens high school and college, typically 4 years, but every 4 years, that's when like you're ready for a bit of a shakeup.
For sure.
So, I mean, for everyone, that's going to be a little bit different, but it sounds like you just kind of met your end of that chapter of your life.
Certainly did. Yeah. And I was kind of, a major part of that too was when you guide, you have to go ride your zone every day.
Yeah.
So if it didn't snow for 3 weeks in Colorado, I couldn't go anywhere else. I couldn't go, and I'm making friends in the industry, and like there's other stuff that I see, and I'm stuck here every day of the winter, and I don't have the opportunity to go. So I just wanted to see like what was next.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the other thing I always think about the quote, like don't live the same year 80 times in a row and call it a life.
Yeah.
Like, let's mix it up. So that's just like now what I chase is like, what's the next year going to look like? Let's mix it up. And I'm still very heavily in the snowmobile thing. And, but like, I'm always open to what's the next opportunity? What could it propel me into in the future? That could be exciting.
Yeah. I agree with you totally. I love that quote too, because it's especially like when you get into your 30s and stuff, it's just like, you're kind of chasing this next thing and doing it year by year, trying to do something a little bit different, you know, definition of insanity, repeating the same stuff and expecting a different result. Right. And I feel like that's what a lot of people kind of do is like, I want to change my life, but you're not doing anything to change your life. You're doing the same shit. So how are you going to expect change?
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
And it's so funny that you just said that, because Chris, my old boss, said it all the time. Yeah. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, dude, this is insanity. We've been doing this. We're on day 100. Like, we need to mix it up. Mm-hmm. And he had this ability, and still does, just to like, he just locks in from like January 1 to April 30th. Yeah. And it's just like, all right, let's make, that's when he makes all his money, and then he's like chilling. So I respect that about him, but I had some moments where he was like, you know, the definition of insanity. I'm like, Chris, you are the definition of insanity right now. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, that's the thing is money talks though. Like,
for sure.
when it's time to eat, you eat, you know, and that's, you know, as a business owner and stuff, that's something that I come across. I'm like, okay, the ball is rolling and I didn't start it, so I'm going to run it. Like, because it's there, you know, you take advantage of those moments much more, and then you learn that it's okay when they stop.
Yeah. And
I think that's probably like the most important thing is like knowing when they stop and then knowing when to move on from what that thing was.
Yeah. And I got one that you will like, and I think for what you're interested in and your audience is interested in is this idea of we feel like I compare myself to Cody Webb. Mm-hmm. I saw you interviewed him. Like, I watch him and I'm like, dude, I got to be as good as Cody Webb on the moto. It's like, calm down, Ross. Like, let's just, you know. So we tend to compare ourselves to the top 1%, the Olympians, the X Games, like the greats. And I got this opportunity to do this job. It was called the Captain of Adventure through BRP. And they flew me to Florida, put me in a van, and I was going to do all of their, like, whether you want to ride jet skis, Sea-Doos, rent Can-Am side-by-side, snowmobiles, all of their stuff. It's like they're outfitters. So the general public can just go rent and go on these guiding operations. So they sent me from Florida, drove across the U.S., Florida, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, California. I did like 50 adventures. And about 10 days in, I was like, oh, my definition of adventure is so different than the average person's. Mm-hmm. And it just struck me so hard. And the problem was I had about 3 months left in the tank. Yeah. Like I had to go for a long time. And I did get to do some really cool ones. There was a few that were incredible, but a lot of them, it really like hit me. And I started calling my friends. I was like, dude, do you know how gnarly you are? You're an insane athlete. But we here in our microcosm, we just think that we suck. Yeah. But it's just this, like, it really like took me back. And I was grateful for all the opportunities that I've had to kind of be in this position. But it definitely took, the pressure off of like trying to just be the best at everything. Yeah. Which is something that like, I think a lot of us do.
It's hard to have fun when you're trying to be perfect.
Yes.
And that's in action sports across the board, you're able to express yourself and you have the freedom to express yourself. So if you're limiting yourself because you're comparing yourself to, as you said, the X Games, the Olympians, like these athletes that are so high and have obviously a God-given talent, but they've also worked really hard to master it. Like some people are built for it. And I've seen it a lot with the professionals I've worked with. It's like, I see professional athlete, I see something just different in them. I don't know what it is. I haven't pinpointed it yet, but there's something that's different about the professional athlete compared to the person that says they want to be a professional athlete, but they're not. There's just something that is a little bit different. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. But when you look at that and you're like, okay, stop comparing myself to that person that has that ability, wherever it comes from, and just go enjoy it. Somehow I do better anyways. Like, that's just like, when I go mess around and I'm having fun, even if I'm like actually racing, that's the best race. I'll go win and feel the best that I've felt all year, compared to when I'm like feeling like I need to grind and I need to hit everything perfect because I saw Carson Brown just rip this corner over here, so I'm going to go try and do what he just did. And it's like, not the same, man. Like you ain't him.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that pressure, if you're not born into it, that greatness, high level, like you're already the best. It's if you don't approach it with fun first, it becomes really hard. Yeah, it doesn't become fun, and you just beat yourself up. Yeah,
that creates a lot of bad taste in your mouth about whatever it is. Like, if as a young child, if I was trying to become a professional racer and it didn't happen, I had this nasty taste in my mouth, and now I don't even watch racing anymore or anything like that because I could have done that or whatever it is, it ruins it all. But it's like, no, man, like that wasn't for me, and that's okay, because I still get to go enjoy it. I still get to go do the things that I would like to do, try and stay as healthy as possible doing them, and it's not that much different. Like, they might get paid for it. That might be the biggest difference. But I know that comes with a lot of pressure, though. And that does change how people feel about their, passion project of life when money starts to kind of become involved. Did you ever have that kind of click in over those 6 years?
Certainly. Yeah. It was always a goal. Like, I remember I had a friend in high school who's like, he's like, no one's going to pay you to ride snowmobiles. And I was like, yeah, watch.
Best motivator.
Yeah. I will die trying. Like, I'm going so hard. But it's certainly like getting sponsored is such an interesting thing, especially now. When you're not a racer, when you're not a competitor, and you're just like trying to sell your brand or, what you are, because there's so many intangible things that you learn through the process. And I still haven't met anyone who's like got the handbook. Yeah. I don't have an agent. I don't have anybody like guiding me through deals or how things should work. So yeah, you learn, it's like, you got to learn the business side too, if you want to do it. And I had Sage Catabriga-Losa on, and we were talking about that. And it's like, there's a lot of guys who probably are the best in the world at what they do, or would be the best in the world, but they don't want to deal with the like business thing that you got to do. So they're just going to go work the normal job and then put in as much time as they can for fun. And then you see them and you're like, that guy's insane. Mm-hmm. He's just like frames houses on the side.
Right.
So yeah, the money stuff is really interesting. And it's, man, it can really like, you get your feelings hurt a lot. Because if you're like trying to do this, you're going to get no 1,000 times for every yes, unless you are special and things are really working. Luckily, I came up in like, and looking back, I'm just like, dude, I should have went so much harder on Instagram and YouTube and everything earlier. Because it was easy to gain followers.
Yeah.
Like I gained like 25,000 followers in like 2 months.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cake. And then everything shifts and, you know, all the algorithms and just the madness that social media is. So navigating that has been, it's always tricky. It's fun. I enjoy creating content. And I think my downside is I don't want to create like the niche stuff. I want to create my stuff. Yep. Like I don't want to do trendy stuff. I think it's annoying and stupid. Like it's not who I am. So, but then when it comes to like the financial side, getting like a big deal, like when I finally got an OEM sponsorship from Lynx, it was just like, this is incredible. And I waited a long time and I thought that I was deserving of one before. And I think a lot of people would probably say the same thing. Like it was just, everybody was like, how do you not have a deal? How do you not have a deal? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I've tried. And then finally everything fell together and I got one and we've gotten to do some really cool stuff. But beyond that, it's still stressful.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I got to make sure that everybody's happy. And at the end of the day, what can you do for your sponsor? It's not what they can do for you. And it becomes, it's always tricky. It's interesting for sure. And I'm still not good. I'm still not an expert at it at all. Not even close. I'm sure in 10 years, I'll know a lot more and I'll wish I would have known some of these things that I'll learn.
Yeah. The social media side of things is so interesting because like you said, there was a point where like just being yourself, being genuine, authentic, got you followers. It built up a good following. YouTube still kind of respects that. Instagram, definitely not as much anymore. They like the trendy shit, as you said, but trendy isn't authentic. Right. And I run into that as well. Like as a coach, I'm like, I want to put stuff out that represents me and Outlier and like what I do and who I am as a coach. So when somebody comes and works with me, they know what they're getting into. But the social media pages don't like that. Right. And so it's like you're always kind of walking this tightrope of how can I deliver for this brand that is paying me, you know, be it a big deal or a small deal, I still have to deliver. So you're like, okay, I need to remain who I am so that I can present this properly. But I also need to do something that is going to like appease the algorithm gods, so to say. But like for, you know, getting an OEM deal, like you said, that's a major accomplishment. So that probably weighs fairly heavy on you to make sure that you're delivering on that end then.
Yes. Yeah. Those are, they're the number one. Yeah. Right. And, cause without them, I don't have a snowmobile to ride. And, so yeah, delivering for those guys and then, just, you know, always trying to think, what are they going to want to see? And also what can I do that they will want to see? Yeah. Because they always have agendas. All of your sponsors will have agendas for their brand and their product. And, I don't want my page to just be ads of me like, yo, buy this like every time. And I've also really tried to be proud of everything that I represent. I remember I've had companies reach out and they're like, yeah, we'd love for you to run this product on your snowmobile or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, okay, send it to me. And then if I like it, we'll talk. Right. And then just like no reply. Like if you can't even send me one to try so I can have an honest opinion, because I'm not going to promote something that I don't believe in. Right. And that's like, I would say moto's the same way. There's a lot of stuff out there that is just like doesn't make the experience better. It doesn't help your bike or your sled. It makes it worse. So always trying to be like Ross stands behind what he runs. This is why he runs it. And he's not trying to sell me something that doesn't work. Right. Yeah. Sometimes you have to explain to people like you got to really get in the dirt with them. And my Instagram messages are out of control. I'm like, dude, what? Like, so yeah, it's just funny. It's an adventure for sure.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you know, as a professional athlete, as somebody that has, you know, made a good name for himself in your sport, it's so funny that it's like, your sport is your sport, and that's what's really important. But at the same time, you have to play this game where you wear a hat as a media creator and, you know, do the YouTube, create a podcast, and basically show sponsors value in that way. So we're like, hey, yes, I'm going to represent you on the sled. You're going to see your logo. We're going to run the product, and we're going to talk about how great the product is, as long as you believe in it, right?
Right.
But then at the same time, people need to be sold stuff on multiple levels, right? Some people will blindly purchase items from seeing a picture of, you know, it on, you know, your sled and be like, Ross runs it, I'm in. You know, you got those diehards that follow.
Yeah.
But then you got some people that need the explanations. You need the people, those people need basically you to sit down and be like, I'm running this bolt because XYZ of weight. It's 10 times stronger because it's titanium, not steel, whatever it is, you know. And that starts to be this side of stuff where it's like we're talking through microphones and we're talking to a camera, and it just changes how we feel as athletes all of a sudden.
Yeah, totally. And like, and with that, those products too, a lot of times sponsors want numbers, they want metrics.
Yep.
Like how many views you get, what's your reach like? And I'm like, if I'm let's use the bolt as an example.
Yeah.
I'm going to sell you this bolt and it's going to get 1,000 views. If somebody's watching the bolt video, they're probably pretty interested in the bolt.
Yeah.
So those 1,000 views are pretty good because they're actually like diving deep into this like niche part that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. So I've had that conversation too. I was like, well, do we value all the views the same? And I think in the grand scheme of things, for anyone who is like going down this path of, you know, influencer athlete, pro athlete, and social media, and media is a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. The longer that you can stay true to who you are, the better, as far as, and that might mean not taking certain deals, because I've had it happen so many times where I put my camera in my buddy's face, who's a pro athlete, and he goes from the friend that I know to the PR dude that I've seen. And I'm like, dude, you're not even the same person. Yeah. And I do it too sometimes.
It's
like,
hard.
It's hard not to, because like you've heard these like horror stories or whatever about like, you know, don't say that or don't mess up. And there's a pressure on you to kind of be maybe a little bit more polished than you truly are. Mm-hmm. But every time that I let kind of me out of the bag, that's why the vlog was so incredible for me, is like we didn't give a shit. Like one time we were like, you guys got to quit cussing so much, and we're like, dude, no one's paying for this. Like, and they all love it. So yeah, the longer that you can stay true to yourself and like raw of who you are, the audience loves it.
Right.
But you just got to balance that with like, you got to understand you might not get X, Y, and Z sponsor, X, Y, and Z deal because of who you are. But in the reality, do you really want to work with a company who doesn't believe in who you are?
Right.
So that's really hard to do.
Yeah. Especially when dollar signs start showing up in their big numbers.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But that might, you know, I've seen it happen. You know, somebody gets presented with that big dollar sign on something that doesn't align with, you know, their brand, who they are. And then they do sign for it. And it's all good and dandy for a little while, but then you don't hear much more after that because they quit being who they were.
Yeah.
And then you lose that, you know, basically lose your integrity at that point, right?
You either lose your integrity or you lose your soul.
Yeah.
One or the other.
It's funny. I knew Travis Pastrana was going to come up at one point in this conversation. For some reason, I was just like, I think of action sports and everybody's Travis Pastrana.
Yeah. He is high royalty. He's part of the royal family for sure.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd both be just the most stoked to have him, you know, in front of us. And like when I was a little kid, I met him and I don't have much recollection of it because I was so young. But I think of Travis and I look at like his career as far as somebody that has stuck to being the person that he is through and through. Doesn't matter what it was. If it was racing, it was freestyle, it was rally car, he is who he is. And there's certain brands that love that. Red Bull was one of them until they weren't. And then they were like, okay, you're a little too crazy, kid. And I say kid, he's like, he was in his 40s, and Red Bull's like, But then you got Black Rifle Coffee Company that's like, we'll support you.
Right.
And that aligned a lot with, his style of things, how he was raised. And I look at that, I'm like, he's obviously the pinnacle. He's been the same person throughout his life. He's made the right deals, been around the right people. But, when we take a step back, back to that, like looking at the 1% type thing, he is the 1% of like what we're talking about in this instance, a professional athlete that has created influence before influencers existed, essentially. And so like, when I think about, action sports, and I think about people in action sports, like ourselves, it's like, this is such a positive community to be around, because if you can talk to somebody that understands your level of being, it's very special. So when you can do that, be yourself, and make money doing it, dude, I feel like there's like, you got it made.
Yeah, that's the end goal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I think it's kind of like dating, like relationships with brands and sponsors and stuff, and building a career out of it's like dating a bunch of different people and brands, because it's like, do you like the idea of me, or do we actually like each other?
Yeah.
Or do I like the idea of you being part of this program that I'm trying to create and stuff? And yeah, it's definitely interesting. And those guys that stay true are they somehow break through and just rise to the top. Yeah. And yeah, the cream always rises. So
yeah, it's funny that you say it's like dating, because it totally is. That was a great example, because it's like, am I just a shiny object to you, or are you just a shiny object to me? Because a lot of times, like, it could just look that way, and then once you get deeper, you're like, oh man, that was kind of a bad move, or like, I don't love this. Yeah, and you have to break up, and that does create, like, sometimes, depending on where their relationships are, that brand with another brand, like, oh, I heard this happen, whatever it is, it gets around, and then people say that, oh, you're hard to work with, or on both sides, being an athlete or a brand, right? So yeah, it's funny that you kind of related that to dating.
Yeah. It's all such a small world, all of it, and you hear the things, it's just like through the grapevine, like, oh yeah, that guy's hard to work with, or this, or I've certainly been through all of it before. So
one thing I wanted to kind of get into a little bit with you is, obviously you train, right?
Yeah.
I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. Got to get into a little bit of the training before we close out. So when you talk about riding a machine that's 500, 600 pounds, right? If you're doing it right, all is good, which is similar to dirt bike. If you're doing it right, it's kind of easy. But when you're doing it wrong, it's really bad. But that doesn't mean that you can rely simply just on the technique and the fundamentals. Those super duper important. But being physically fit, strong, good endurance and stuff like that obviously comes into play, especially when you're in the back country and you kind of have no choice. Like when you get out there, I imagine you're out there for long stints of time.
Yeah, you only, when you get stuck on a snowmobile, all you got is time. That's what my dad always used to say. Better start digging, kid. All you got is time out here. Like, all right.
So did you so obviously as a kid, you grew up riding and everything like that. When did training become like an important part of your career?
Yeah. So the gym and training, like that whole, we have it's been a fun relationship. For sure. It's taught me a lot. And, I was a late bloomer, big time. And you could definitely attribute a lot of how my, early adulthood has turned out to that, because I was avid football, baseball, and then I just didn't sprout like the rest of the guys did. Yeah. And it took like 2 ear shots from like a middle linebacker, me playing slot receiver football. Like, and I was like, all right, I'm not big enough to play anymore.
Yeah.
So, I was really good friends with our running back in high school. He was small, but a stud. Like he broke single season rushing record and everything. And he was in the gym and because he wanted to play college ball.
Yeah.
He didn't care what level. He's like, I'm going to go play college ball. And so he was in, and then, something just happened where we were friends, and I was like, yeah, I guess I kind of want to like get in shape and get into this. And, I was kind of soft around the edges and just didn't have much confidence. So he really introduced it to me, and I just did whatever he did, I did.
Yeah.
And that certainly helped. And I had heard that it was going to be tough going to Colorado and riding with Brant and like going to that. So I wanted to be prepared. So that's where it started. And I've had probably like most people, a lot of like rubber banding in the fitness. I've been way thinner and more endurance based. I'm probably as strong as I've been right now, but so it's definitely been a journey for sure. Yeah. And it's it always pays dividends. And then especially once I got into hard enduro racing, and it's like, you're gonna be on the bike for 6 hours this weekend. That's what, now I'm like, oh yeah, now we really need to get after it too. Right. So it's definitely for the sports that I do. And I hate being dropped on a mountain bike. I hate being just outridden physically. So, that fear of like your friend dropping you on a ride or just not being able to keep up and being a liability, that all that stuff kind of plays into it as well. So yeah, it's just kind of the whole thing of, and then you do fall in love with it. I think most people would if they really got into it.
When there's a why behind it, it helps a ton. Like, I mean, I've worked with hundreds of people throughout my career, and the people that don't continue on are the ones that are told they need to do it and don't have a reason why they're doing it for themselves. And I think that's another beauty of the action sport community is like, you can do this stuff until you're 50, 60, 70, it depends on how you take care of yourself, so health, fitness, training is all a big contributor to your longevity, essentially, and not just longevity of life, but longevity of the enjoyment of life through, whether it's on a piece of machinery that has an engine or it's just on a board that you can go down the hill on. And I think that's kind of the biggest beauty as a whole when it comes to training is when you do have that why, it's kind of easy.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. When we first started chatting, that was, you said you're in the gym. So I was like, I want to get with the bin community, but I also want to get with people that have similar, feelings about, being in these places and doing these type of things. And, you're one of the first that I was like, I think this dude is, about it and I can relate to him. Obviously it took a little while for us to get together, but that's all good.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, I really appreciate, getting together with me, talking all of this. I learned a lot about you. And, I think that's like the start of how friendships go is like, where do we lie on the playing field? Are we on the same? Are we different? And, having people that, for one, proximity wise are close is amazing, but two, also just like great people. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chit chat with me.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Too easy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.